harmony, the space where soul meets source and healing flows from the unseen. I'm your host, Anya, and tonight's guest is nothing short of miraculous. Jennifer Poland, author of The Way to Peace, is a cancer survivor whose healing journey unfolded not in a clinic, but through divine intervention and sacred partnership. Together with her beloved Daryl Gurney, Jennifer's channel Celestial Wisdom, and they now share a powerful joint practice rooted in the union of the divine feminine and masculine. If you have ever doubted that healing could be scared and science could meet spirit, this episode is your invitation to believe again. So, Jennifer, your healing from cancer is such a profound miracle. Can you walk us through the moment you realized that this wasn't a medical, it was divine?
Yes, absolutely. And just to preface that, there's some medical steps that I did have to take, but it was all rooted in also intuition. About 4 years before I actually had the diagnosis, this was when Daryl and I were first coming together as a couple. So we were, newly. I had a prophecy given to me that he would be looking after me with cancer, and I didn't want that prophecy, so I kind of tucked it away and tucked it out of the back of my mind. And as the years went on, I thought, I guess that wouldn't come to fruition. But about 2 months before we were getting married, I was having some symptoms, some gynecological symptoms, and I said I need to see a doctor. And anyway, we live in a small town, and we actually have an OBGYN here, so he was able to see me right away. And a week after our wedding, I was diagnosed with uterine cancer. And part of, I think, it's important for your listeners to understand my own journey with the divine feminine. We really look at the body, and Daryl will speak to an indicator or symptoms of what's going on a deeper level, spiritual level, an emotional level, mental level. And for me, pushing my feminine away, the clarification of my body rejecting, my uterus area, and struggling with the cancer there. So when I had to forward, I had done a ton of spiritual work. I had divine awakening to this when I was actually 28 years old. But part of being a healer and walking the healer path is we often are learning lessons in a deeper way so that we can actually then teach it to others. And so when I walked this path, it was important for me to not only learn the lesson for self, but so that I could offer the wisdom and teachings in my practice. And so I had a full hysterectomy, but to my recovery was, and the night before my diagnosis, I have to say, Spirit came in and said, "You are going to have cancer, but you're going to be okay." And so, as much as that was difficult to hear, I knew before we met with the doctor the next day. And so, to my recovery, Spirit said, "It's going to come back if you don't integrate all of the lessons that cancer is gifting you." And so went through what was coming up and what I wanted, I could embrace in terms of accepting the feminine, healing this trauma, healing the struggles that as women that we've carried. And so, but the thing about this constantly allows what you're willing to. We have to do it slowly so not to overwhelm ourselves. So, I met with each layer of healing, like the proverbial onion that was being revealed to me, and even through clients, I would learn different things about the feminine collective. And the night before my checkup appeared again, and they said the cancer is back. And so this is where things got tricky, because I was like, oh my gosh, sure enough, the appointment. And it was my 6-month kind of well-being checkup. And the surgeon, my doctor, said there's a lump here right beside where the original location was. And so I need to send you for CAT stat to move forward in terms of how we to attack. So anyway, so in the fight, I said I was for the CAT scan because they lost my paperwork, ironically, and it was kind of serendipitous that way. Daryl and I dug in healing practice, and really deeper issues within a lot of the collective work, but even in my own past lives and different things. And we did deeper healing. And so as a model to what's possible, and I know something, it's not always, black and white, but we met each layer openly. And the night before the CAT scan, Spirit came in again and said, okay, we're going to remove the cancer. And Daryl has a vocal crystal that he works with. They said for him to use this crystal on the site, and we will remove it by divine intervention through grace, and because you've learned all your lessons that it offered you. And so that is the story. And so we went to the CAT scan, and of course back clear. But then the last piece to this kind of interesting puzzle, because I love where science meets spirituality, is my surgeon called 2 weeks later on a Saturday, which I think was kind of, it just shows his own kind of head scratching, couldn't be with it. He had called other oncologists in the greater area, the bigger cities, was, consulting with them, and they said, you need further confirmation that she's clear because she's in a high risk category. And anyways, we went for more tests, and of course it all came back clear. So that's my story.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And how did Daryl's presence and your combined practice become part of that healing process?
Well, yeah, I mean, excuse me. Well, we, I've been a mind body therapist for about 30 years. And so it very much aligned with having to deal with things at the level of cause if you want to get ultimate resolution to the problem. And so we were always, doing the work that we could find, but there was, as Jennifer said, many deeper layers. So we do actually hours every day of inner work and work for the collective. So, but this was, I use muscle testing as a way to be able to ask questions to source, to get answers as to what's going on at a deeper level that needs awareness. And so I then use maybe energy psychology, I guess is the term that's used now, but different various forms to be able to change the energetic dynamics that express themselves as these issues. I mean, in mind body medicine, as Jen was referring to, we don't look at symptoms as the ultimate problem. Symptoms are the messenger. And once you get the message, then theoretically you don't need the messenger anymore. But there was many messages with this. And I think it's important for the listeners to understand that illness just isn't a random thing that just happens, or that they're actually participating in why this is showing up in their lives. And if they take responsibility, it might be more investigation, more introspection, more inner work on their end. But everyone would just like to take a pill and have it go away. But when you do your healing work, it's not just about the symptoms going away or the problem going away. It changes you. It changes you as a person, changes how you are in the world, changes your relationships. It helps your evolution of yourself as a soul. And it's ultimately then we have a very different relationship with our body, where most of us in the Western world or in any part of the world that we're at odds with our body. And very often we think, oh, I don't like my body. It doesn't look like that body, or it's not performing as well, or whatever. But we are given this sacred vessel and this sacred opportunity to live a life and to work on fulfilling our purpose, that we have lost touch with the bigger reason of why we're here in the first place. So as we go on this healing journey, it very often reveals things as evidenced by people who've gone through problems like this and said, oh my God, that was the best thing that's ever happened to me, because the person they are coming out on the other end is a very different person than the person that was before they had.
Mm-hmm. It's incredible how healing sometimes comes not through one path, but through sacred union.
Yeah, no, I'm for sure. I mean, this is for us, this journey, we are learning to be, like Jennifer had to learn to be more in her feminine, and I was on the process of having to be more in my masculine. And we've in our world, that's one of the things that we've lost, is that polarity. Um, Very often we push off one gender or the other. Like we're both everything. We both have masculine and feminine in us, but in our journeys, sometimes we push away. Like Jen was the firstborn on a farm, and she had to do all this work, and she was a girl, but the family was like, well, it would have been better if it was a boy. And so as a result of that, she had to become like a boy, and she was responsible for her siblings that came along. She did a lot of work on the farm and had tons of chores and so on. And so she then kind of said, well, I'm going to push off this feminine stuff, and because I need to be more masculine. And for me, I know I grew up in a situation where I pushed off the masculine because I didn't have a great relationship with my father. And I said, well, I don't want to be like that. And so, and then I went on a spiritual journey and developed more on my feminine side. But see, in sacred union, you want to have opposite polarities, the masculine holding the masculine, feminine holding the feminine, because then essentially you have a stronger attraction, right? It's just like the opposite poles of a magnet, how strongly they're attracted to each other. And this then becomes the journey of moving towards wholeness, is embracing these opposites in us, and recognizing when to embrace more of the masculine and to step into that role, and when to bring in the feminine. But the culture itself has demonized the feminine through religion, through witch burnings, through the patriarchal world, the male leadership, the male god. All of these things have been basically at expense, and so achievement has been worshipped, and science is our god. So we have very much aligned with the linear masculine, and both men and women have pushed off the feminine, but we've at a great price. We've lost touch with our intuition, our creativity, our nurturing, that hearth and home, the feminine, the softness that it brings to our world. And I think that's reflected in the imbalance that we see in our environment at large.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, what happens when we are too dominant in one and disconnected from the other?
Mhm. Well, I mean, individually, I think that as Daryl and I can attest from our own journeys, we lean into a part of ourselves and we disown the other part, and so that other part goes into shadow. But that other part it doesn't go quietly. It starts to kind of act out, if you want to call it that. So it can come in because it's trying to get our attention. It wants to. We ultimately want wholeness, and so we draw this part of ourselves back in ways in which we look at other people and we judge them. So the person, we can look to what we've disowned because we look at the people that we are triggered by, or we judge, or we have issues with. And then the same as people that we put up on pedestals, that's another aspect in which we disown parts of ourselves because we're looking outside of ourselves as at our guru or at someone that we are admiring or are struck by, and so we give our power away that way. So I think the ultimate thing is the return of our wholeness really has to begin with the embracing of our true nature, and we have to go back to the great teachings, the wisdom teachings, which is that return to our innocence, the return of the inner child state. And what that really means is really embracing that little if you think of yourself, your little 4-year old or your little 6-year old running around on the playground, and he or she is just having a completely immersed experience in themselves. They're not worried about what they look like or what they're saying or what time it is, or this or that. There's just an immersion into who they are, and the spontaneity of the freedom that comes from that. And so, but what we do is, we are, unfortunately, we go through life with all types of conditionings and programs, that we gather from our parents or from others outside of ourselves. And so we start to limit and shut down these really our true nature. And so that dims our light, that dims the light body. And the light body is what we're here to reveal. We're here to reveal our soul, our light, our essence. And so this is the call to return to that state of innocence.
Harmony isn't just a concept, it's a frequency we embody, especially in sacred partnerships.
Yeah, for sure. It's frequency. All energy has an energetic signature to it, and that then becomes the goal is when you come into a sacred relationship, and you're in basically in touch with your soul, and you're embodying more and more of your soul. You drop out of your mind and more into your heart, more into your body, more into your instinctual nature, and then from that place you open up to your vulnerability, and in that vulnerability, you're now aligning with the energy of connection and intimacy. And that vulnerability and that intimacy is exactly what is needed for us to kind of awaken our light body and evolve spiritually. So, but what happens is the energies that are very often aligned in us are ones of repressed emotions and limiting beliefs. And these are just like tuning forks, and they speak to the field of infinite possibilities. And when I say tuning forks, because like tuning forks, if two tuning forks are exactly the same size, and you strike one and bring it close to the other one will start to vibrate, even though you didn't strike it. And if one was a bigger tuning fork and you struck it and you brought it close to a smaller tuning fork, nothing would happen. So whatever vibrations you're aligned with, so if it's anger or resentment or grief or hurt or whatever, that's a frequency that's speaking to the field of like infinite number of tuning forks. And it goes out and finds a corresponding tuning fork and draws that experience into your life. So we're fundamentally our lives, when we say we create our reality, we do it energetically, we do it unconsciously, and we do it from what's unhealed in ourselves. So so when you believe you suffer, then that frequency goes out and it shakes hands with something in the field and draws that experience to us. So we're not victims, we're creating a reality. So what we need to do is make the unconscious conscious, so we can see what we're doing on an energetic level. When we do that, we're taking responsibility, which puts us back in the seat of our power, and we can create a different reality energetically by aligning with our essential nature, which is divine. And so when you get into a sacred relationship, the mirrors that the sacred relationship have to offer you mirror back to yourself your own divine nature. If you can see it in the other person, then it opens up the possibility that you can see divinity in yourself. And then when you connect with that, and that's the energy you speak to the field with, that you find the corresponding in resonance in the field, and then you start to draw that to your life. And that's how you can consciously create your reality, and which is a strong choice, and it's a lot more enjoyable.
Makes sense. So, your book, The Way to Peace, carries so much cosmic wisdom. What message do you feel is most urgent for humanity right now?
Well, I think that the deepest way in which we can have the most healing uh, impact, thank you,
Right.
is our reconnection to the earth and our instinctual nature. Because from there, we can build a stronger foundation to our to humanity. And so you think of the story. I mean, lots of people know the story, the Three Little Pigs, and the wisdom of little fables, and the fables that teach us these simple little stories. But it's kind of like, we've built a nation on straw and sticks. And so the fragility of our lives has been peppered with poor choices that have been built on faulty ideas. And so the mind has been very highly programmed by the false gods of the flesh, the false light, the desire, the structure of like seeking outside of ourselves. So how do we stop seeking outside of ourselves? Well, we have to go back in and find we have to root, and we have to reconnect to the earth. And so the soul is in harmony with the earth. It's like it beats at the pulse of the Schumann resonance, that, in terms of it. So it wants to be in resonance with the earth. And so our connection to the earth then is going to really strengthen our temple, our physical body, so that the soul can drop in. And then when the soul organically is present, we just naturally know that we're making choices from a heart-centered place. So it's in balance with our mind, it's in balance with our feeling body, and it's in balance with our environment. And so consciousness really has to begin at the root of our embodiment in the environment of the earth, because we live in the earth. We don't live on the earth. The earth is a part of our greater body. That's the cosmic oneness that we speak of. So you think of, like, being at one in partnership. Daryl and I are, we are one in ourselves, and then we have now in partnership with each other. And then we have in belonging to a community, and then, collectively in our country, and then the earth body, and then the cosmic body. And so our reach begins to grow greater and greater ripples, the more centered we are. So in order to change the world, like Aanya said, we need to be the peace that we wish to see in the world. And that has to begin with our connection to our instinctual nature and the earth.
Yeah, I mean, in all of that in the book, it also really speaks to the fact that the agenda of us evolving as a humanity in our world is is hampered, because there's a darkness, an influence of darkness, and the book speaks to that. And it's really disowned aspects of ourselves coming back to haunt us. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of influences that exist outside the third dimension that have an agenda to not allow us to evolve. And the game has been very much of psychological manipulation, whether it's through dreams or through imposter guides or through various forms of dark magic and so on. So in our practice, when we're working with clients one-on-one, very often this comes up. The book speaks to it as well. And we need to work on the person and help them heal what we call the Velcro, or why they've drawn that to them. But nevertheless, when those dark influences are there, they tend to want to anchor us in these patterns, and they're elusive to us because we don't even know. But it affects us, and it's quite a strong influence. We can't see it with our physical senses. We can intuit it with our intuitive senses, but because so many of us are not in touch with that aspect of ourselves, these things can go unchecked. When we're in our minds, the minds are highly programmable. If any of your listeners have ever been to a stage hypnotist, a stage hypnotist can say, okay, when I hand you the microphone, when the person's in a programmable state, say, you won't remember your name. And so, can you tell me your name? And the hypnotist hands them the microphone, and the person literally can't even remember their name. So it is, our minds are, so how do we get around that? Is we have to be in touch with our truth detectors, which is access through the Akasha, which is access through our hearts. So we have to be able to be connected to this foundation, like Jen was saying, our roots and our lower chakras that open up our access to our hearts, where we can then access the truth. And as they say, the truth sets us free. But the mind has got a lot of fixed ideas from our learning and our programming, and we go, well, that's the way it is. But it closes off our ability to be open to new potentials and new inspirations and new ideas that would be exactly the things that would take us out of the pickle that we find ourselves in, either personally or collectively. So this then becomes the journey from the head to the heart or into the body. I said before, our relationship with our body is usually adverse, and our relationship with ourselves is one of the inner. We beat ourselves up. We have a negative self-talk. We're comparing ourselves to others in the world instead of aligning with our essential nature. So as we start to do our inner work and we heal from our inner critic, and we come in right relationship with our bodies, and we drop down into our root, and we connect to the heart, then we can evolve, and then we can grow, and then we can contribute to the collective in a much greater way. So that then becomes something that's inherently within our realm to do, because we look at the world out there and we feel like we're a victim to it. But as we change ourselves, the ripple that we send out into the collective is very strong because it's coherent and it has a massive impact. So changing ourselves is inherently within our reach. And that's why we were gifted a healing system that we'll have up online very shortly, where people can learn how to do their inner work. It's a very simple process, but very deep. And it took us a lot of time to be able to access this because we're aligned with it ourselves. So this then is, and there's other systems there, but the patient is full to go inside and to heal, because there's great gift.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, how can listeners begin tuning into divine messages in their everyday lives?
Mm. Yes, good question. I think the insight or the journey that I would encourage people to do is to really to listen, but to take time in their day. So in the beginning of their day and at the end of the day, I think it's a well opportunity to meet the world quietly, and so as we you know embrace the morning, there's a quiet that a stillness that many masters speak of in the early hours. And so journaling, dream work, so you can ask for a dream when you go to bed at night, and if you have a question, that because the subconscious is very protective. So if it's not something you really want to know the answer to, we have to find a way in which we can kind of get around our blocks and our limitations and the parts of us that are defended, so to what the truth actually is. So dream work is a great way to ask for guidance. We offer many ways in terms of guided meditations. I actually have a Facebook group, Come Together, Heal and Awaken, and that is still active on Facebook, and that people can download their free meditations in which they can begin to access guidance from their spirit guides. But I think that the biggest thing is we have to really embrace the feminine, and that is being understanding of the importance of vulnerability and our emotional connection in our bodies. So our bodies are constantly communicating vibrations and information on very subtle levels. But if we're always up in the mind and busy and really, distracted with what people think of us or what we have to do today or what really distraction is the object of the darkness. It's really tempting you off of your path. And so it's really the invitation to be present in the moment and to allow space for that wisdom to drop in. If we always have the answer or we always are rushing to figure it out, we're going to miss these subtle insights that are available to us.
I love that reminder that peace isn't passive, it's received, activated, lived.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, we're yeah, I mean, another way that people, if we see clients one-on-one on Zoom, so people from all over the world, and if they come and do sessions with us, we can do a lot of work in a span of an hour and 15 minutes. That is that's also available to people, and some of Jen's prophecies and some of the work is on our website, thenatureofus.ca. People can visit there and see all the things that we offer and all the options that are available to them. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much, Jennifer Poland, for sharing your light, your love, and your living testimony. Your story is a sacred reminder that healing isn't just possible, it's written in the stars and etched in the soul. So, grab her book, The Way to Peace. Connect with Jennifer and Daryl at The Nature of Us. And remember, the divine is not somewhere else, it lives within you. So, until next time, Honor your light, trust your journey, and keep dancing in sacred.